Good to see you today.
Good to see you.
Yep. Today we're here with Dave Moore and myself, Jeff McManus, Chairman of the Republican Party of Bexar County. We're going to discuss the issues that are important in Proposition A and why every intelligent and caring citizen should vote against this proposition. Today we're going to focus on the important aspects of it that you should know about when you decide to vote for or against. Dave, I'd like you to open up here with a statement regarding that.
Proposition A is an endeavor by extremists who are trying to change the social structure of our community. They're trying to obtain, as they put it, scarce funds away from public safety to pay for and to benefit social reform programs and social benefit programs, which for decades have not produced the results that we had hoped for. It alters and enables the city of San Antonio to become enablers for criminal misconduct and puts the public at risk, both from financial loss and loss of growth by these measures. I like to talk about, the phrase law and order. We have laws that set the boundaries and the conduct of our citizens and within the community. And with that came order. Order brings in schools, churches, brings in business and prosperity. But in the absence of that order, we're left with chaos. And we're left with investors and businesses suffering. We're left with individuals being victimized by an element of the community, which relatively 1 or maybe 2% who feel it's okay to take what they want, to do what they want, and not be punished for it.
So we're talking about potential impunity for bad behavior. And we're not talking about major crimes. We're talking about the low-level crimes that disrupt our society, that disrupt our ability to live freely as we want. We're not talking about things like, I like to say, don't be fooled by the, quote, legalization of marijuana. That cannot happen through Proposition A. There are other major issues that we need to be aware of that will affect us throughout San Antonio and all surrounding areas. It will spill out of there. You will bring more criminals into San Antonio. You will chase away one of our major resources, which is the tourist trade. They will be at risk of incurring violent behavior, theft, and discomfort while they're trying to have a vacation. So of those major issues that go beyond this marijuana issue, those are the ones we need to focus on, because marijuana is a minor thing here. The real issue is 21 civil disorder ordinances that exist that protect you from your home, protect you in your home, protect you in your business, protect you in your livelihood.
Right.
And those are the things we need to talk about. Which one should we get into first here?
Well, probably the most that everyone is talking about is the Cite and Release program. In the state of Texas, the Cite and Release program, as Act 4 wants to call it, has been around since 1967 and has been utilized by the police department for decades, along with recently the Bexar County District Attorney's Office. What it does, though, it enables individuals to commit theft, willful destruction of private property, theft of services, graffiti, which victimize individuals and businesses to suffer a loss, and they do so with impunity.
How much loss could somebody incur if these resolutions or this proposition is passed? I mean,
Well,
how much would it cost somebody?
you could walk into a restaurant, sit down and have a major meal, and up to $749 walk that bill. And the owners of that restaurant, the mom and pop, even the large franchise, they're going to have to eat it. They're not going to be able to recover their money because under this proposition, law enforcement will only be allowed to issue a citation or a verbal warning. They will not be permitted to make an arrest for having committed a crime of theft of services.
Now, if that citation is issued, wouldn't the person who's suffered the loss have an opportunity to go after these individuals and recover those funds?
Under the current system of the laws, way it works, yes, because they would be able to positively identify that person. But under Proposition A, the proposition reduces the level of identification which is required to be put on that citation. A police officer would have to accept things like a utility bill, a rent bill, or a rent contract, a library card, or even just another person's verbal statement that this person is this name and they reside at this address. Regardless of whether it's truthful or not, the police have to accept that, and that is the name that goes on the citation.
So if anybody finds my utility bill, I can expect to be getting a letter in the mail that I was stopped in the streets of San Antonio, and now I need to report because of this citation. Or
back when I went on the police department in the mid '80s, there was a business element downtown that produced fake identification. And they had kiosks all over downtown. You could buy any kind of identification with any name, date of birth, and address on it. Under this proposition, I would open up a new kiosk and start selling fake IDs because it's the ID that is presented that goes on the citation. And if you cannot identify the person, positively identify the person, you cannot prosecute them because you cannot bring indictment against them. So if I have a card that says I'm an ordained minister, all right, and that my name is such and such, and I reside in Modesto, California, that's an acceptable form of identification for this proposition. But that's not me, and so any citation I'm issued is worthless. So I'm going to get away with it because not only can law enforcement not make an arrest, but they can't identify me to prosecute me. Consequently, the owners of the restaurant cannot identify me to bring action against me to recover their loss. And why should a person go to small claims court to recover $749? It's going to cost them more money.
Well, also on that point, I'm just thinking about it. It's not, it's one person with $750, but we've seen on TV where these massive people rush into different stores and they all run out, and there's anywhere from 10 to 30 of those people. Mm-hmm. So each one of those could be walking away with $749 worth of goods and not be prosecutable.
Correct.
So if you do the math on that, that's $7,500 that every restaurant, every small business, every boutique, every clothing store, every chocolate store could lose and not be able to recover.
Well, we've seen the results of Proposition 47 in California and on the West Coast. Proposition 47 included a provision exactly like the theft of services and such. Their ceiling was $950. okay? But we've seen the result of mass shoplifting, mass thefts, where people run in, just as you said, and you've got 30 people committing theft at one time. They're not prosecuted. As a result, the CEO of Walmart said if shoplifting is not curtailed, prices will go up, our stores will close. Well, as of March 24th, all stores in Portland, Oregon, Walmart stores in Portland, Oregon, were closed permanently. That's the end result. And we got loss of jobs, loss of availability of services and goods, all because we allow or we enable people to commit crimes with impunity.
So in order for the businesses in San Antonio that service the tourist trade, they're going to have to be more restrictive, more cautious about who they let in there, and in many instances just close because they're not there. So all the bars, all the restaurants that are down there for the tourists will end up closing, and the tourists will stop coming to San Antonio. And the amount of revenue that San Antonio gets from the tourist trade is one of the biggest revenues sources in order for us to provide services to the citizens.
It doesn't even stop there. Take for the consideration that we have all of these investors coming into San Antonio, developing property, developing low-income housing, developing shops. They're going to refrain from coming into San Antonio because of the loss of property. An individual goes to a building site and steals an air conditioning unit that's under $750. Even if he was caught, he can only be issued a citation or a verbal warning not to do it again.
And if he's doing that, he's going to know to have his ID
correct.
that doesn't represent
now,
who he really is.
And so now you have investors going, no, I'm not going to go to San Antonio because I can't afford to. So we lose investors, we lose promoters, we lose development, we lose prosperity as a result of theft. When you add in graffiti, less than $2,500, you even multiply that damage, because what's to stop someone from spray painting the front your garage, doing $1,000 worth of damage that you have to pay, and even if they're caught, they're issued a citation or a verbal warning not to do it again.
So as that increases, it's going to become also harder and harder for people in San Antonio to get and afford insurance, because everybody says, oh, the insurance company will pay for that. But you know what? When they incur lots of losses like that, they'll start canceling policies.
That's only one aspect, one issue that'll result in the increase in insurance rates. It won't be just for the homeowner, it will be for the companies and other businesses that have to have insurance to cover their equipment, their material, their product. All that will all increase.
It's interesting when you think about the ramifications of something that seems so simple as Proposition A. Let's make a few things, let's change a few things. But it really, what you have to do is, as you said to me earlier today, you have to look at the fine print. What's really coming along with those one or two items in this proposition that you may be in favor of? I've got a whole list of them here.
Well,
and we could discuss these.
It goes back to what Act 4 SA is trying to do. They're trying to pass a measure, a proposition, which again changes our social structure by utilizing a mass list of propositions or questions, which they're hoping people will grasp one or two and in turn pass the whole bill. But it's like dealing with a charlatan. They use headlines, trigger words, banners. They sell a good product provided you don't read the fine print, because it's in the fine print that you realize how dangerous that product is.
this is the fine print.
That's just
Part
that's
of
just
it.
a thumbnail of the fine print.
I mean, somebody handed me this the other day, and I could not believe that all of these issues that are covered by penal codes in certain sections will then become a cite and release, cite and release situation, and the people that are committing these crimes and taking away our freedoms and imposing their will on us as citizens will be able to just walk away.
We are enabling criminal misconduct.
And with that, does San Antonio not become a magnet for more criminals?
Of course it does. And it results in a loss of revenue. It results in a loss of tourist trade, businesses.
Individual freedoms.
Theft is not a victimless crime. It is a horrendous victimization of the public, of individuals. Not only do you have to pay for the loss of the property, but you also have to pay for the replacement of the property or the repair of the property. You have willful destruction, criminal mischief, willful destruction of private property or property. Wants to stop an individual from walking up and just smashing the window on your car. That's a $300-400 bill. Plus you've got the time that you've got to leave your car in a repair shop. But if he was caught, he's going to be issued a citation or a verbal warning not to do it again.
And probably not even in his real name.
Very likely, because having false identification is going to become a necessity in this city.
This is frightening. It's truly frightening. And then in here I read that voyeurism will no longer be prosecuted.
Public nudity, voyeurism, peeping toms, simple assaults.
Simple assaults on all our tourist people walking downtown. If you go downtown, all those people down there are now going to be subject to simple assault.
Well,
and the police department will do a cite and release if they can even capture the perpetrator.
Well, for those of us who are old enough, Ozzy Osbourne wouldn't have been prosecuted and wouldn't have been arrested for urinating on the Alamo, because urinating or defecating in a public place would no longer be an arrestable offense.
Oh, God. Talk about a stinky situation.
We have a homeless problem here in San Antonio. It is against the law, both locally and with state, to camp on public land. Again, we are enabling the problem by not enforcing the laws that are there to protect us. And let's face it, homelessness in San Antonio is costing us millions of dollars every year, and there is no end in sight, and it is a problem that is getting worse. And we're going to be faced with that problem until we make sensible changes in our approach and in our application of the law. But enabling individuals to violate the law is not the solution. And that's what Proposition does. It enables criminal misconduct on the misguided promise of Act 4 SA that it will reduce police officers' time and free them up, will save millions of dollars in prosecutable offenses. Yeah, well, it's going to save millions of dollars because we're not going to be prosecuting them because we can't bring them to trial. Yeah, it's not going to free up because officers are still going to have to respond because people have been victimized, they've been violated, and they're going to want to talk to a police officer. It's not going to improve things. It's just simply going to make it worse. And yes, Act 4 is in an article recently published by Express News. They're saying that the opposition to Proposition A is utilizing fear. Well, yes, we should be afraid of it because this will destroy the structure of our society, destroy the structure of our community, and put our community at risk. We are the 7th largest city in the United States. between 2021 and 22, we had a 1.9% increase in population. Well, that growth will cease to exist if we allow crime, if we enable, and I like to use the word, enable crime to flourish in our city.
Because this is making it, excuse me, more difficult to hold people be accountable for their actions. They will have no sense of responsibility. And can you imagine what takes place? If you're not held accountable for this level of crimes, don't you then logically flow forward into larger crimes where you think, hey, I'm not going to be held accountable for that either?
No, that's
So without being held accountable, there is no respect for individuals, for individual property. We lose the security of our sense of property ownership. It's no longer protected. It's now put at risk. This is frightening.
It should be frightening.
And there's a couple things on there that may appeal to you. But think about what baggage comes along with that vote of, I would like to see this, but boy, what you're going to get with it is going to cause you a greater upset. Your stomach will be turning over as you watch this city crumble.
It's like buying that used car from the shady car dealer. Yes, it looks good. And when he starts it, it sounds good, but when you drive it off the lot, it falls apart and you're left with a humongous bill and you've lost your money.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because when I was in college, I went down and bought a VW that I could barely afford. I had no sooner pulled out of the lot onto the street than the right front wheel fell off. And that's a true story.
And that's what Act 4 in ground game Texas are relying on. They are relying on misinformation, popularity of changes such as the marijuana laws. It's not going to legalize it. It just enables more criminal misconduct. It is the fine print that undermines this whole program. We don't want to pass this based upon, ooh, this looks good, and I would be for that. And then we buy the product and we realize we've been taken and we've been victimized by charlatans, snake oil salesmen.
We are perpetually fooled in the laws and efforts and propositions like this through decades, where we think this is really good, but we didn't read the whole bill and we didn't read the small print, and then look at what we got. I mean, I won't go into other specifics where that took place, but we've seen that happen in Washington, we've seen that happen in Austin, and now this is happening here, right in your backyard in San Antonio, and it's going to spill out there. Don't be fooled again, folks. This is a measure for only fools to vote in favor of.
This whole proposition, 13 pages long, 3,495 words. I think there's 14 sections. It is the largest proposition ever put before the voters of this since the charter was established. The actual ballot wording is 497 words long, a continuous one sentence. It takes nearly 2 pages to include it. They're counting on people not to read it. They're counting on people to just go by the hype and the propaganda that is being put out by local media and certain elements that are trying to get this passed. And it's not going to do anything but destroy the city.
And like in good business practices, don't sign a contract unless you've read all the way through it and you know all the aspects to it. And by voting in favor of this proposition, you are in essence signing a contract that you have not read, because the whole thing has not been put out there for everybody to see, nor have there been any debates conducted by people discussing the whole thing. So I personally encourage you to vote against Proposition A, even if you like what the first 2 lines say, maybe the first 5 lines, but if you can't read past those 5 lines and take the time to read the whole ballot, I advise you, vote against it, because you're buying something that you don't know what you're really getting.
There are a lot of aspects that should be addressed, but by our laws, they need to be addressed through the legislation. Every aspect of this proposition is a violation of our state constitution, our state bill of rights, our local government code, our health and safety codes. Even our own city charter is being violated. And we were being led down the path. Well, we're standing in front of a snake oil salesman's wagon buying snake oil. It's not going to give us what we hope for. It's not going to give us what they are telling us it will give us. It is a complete fabrication and a complete lie, and it's only going to cause harm.
How many sections are there? There's like 13 or something?
There's actually 16 because
There's 16 sections, but of those 16, how many of them could legally be changed by this proposition?
none.
None. Because
And that's why I said the entire Proposition A violates state constitution, state bill of rights, local government code, health and safety code, election codes, and our own city charter. Again, it goes back to enable criminal misconduct, specifically on the marijuana issue. San Antonio will not enforce marijuana possession and use. State law dictates that every city, county, sheriff's department, police department will enforce all drug laws to the fullest extent. Period.
so Prop A, under no circumstances, changes the marijuana laws in Bexar County.
We can't even refuse to enforce it because state law forbids it. We have to enforce it.
And then as far as protecting women and the most vulnerable in our society, this opens up all sorts of ways in which women can be violated, elderly could be violated,
It puts the citizens, the mass percentage of this population, at risk because it enables criminal misconduct, specifically the abortion issue. Act 4 says, well, SAPD has never enforced an abortion law because it was legal. But now, under existing laws, to perform an abortion is either a second or first degree felony, punishable by law. The only reasonable people to have the authority or have the expertise to investigate that and to enforce it are law enforcement. No, they're not doctors, they're not medical personnel, but they are the collectors of those expertise who will testify that yes, there was an abortion performed. Passing the abortion issue is not going to bring back clinics. It is not going to bring back clinics that will perform medically safe abortions. It's going to bring back the clandestine, the backroom, the kitchen table abortion, which individuals are going to profit from because the San Antonio Police Department is not going to be allowed to investigate it, not going to be allowed to enforce it, or even share intelligence with other agencies. We're putting women at risk of serious and severe injury and possible death.
So what this means is that if Proposition A passes, we're not going to make abortions legal, and it's not going to support the pro-life cause or the pro-choice cause, but what it's going to do is cause the ability for those horrible abortion services to rise up in, as you say, David, garages, kitchens, back rooms, and the police will not be able to enforce or pursue those people that are performing these horrible acts.
Would not even be able to assist other agencies in the investigation or collection of intelligence. It completely bars local law enforcement from taking any action against abortionists who are profiteering from an illegal act. And we created by passage of the Proposition A.
So if you vote for Proposition A because you think it's a pro-abortion issue or a pro-choice issue, it's not. It's a make our society more prone to being victims of criminals. This is not a pro-abortion or an anti-abortion vote that you should be making. You should be looking again at the fine print of what comes along with that vote if you're not aware of what else comes with your expression of preference. Now, David, there's one real issue that's on this Proposition A, which is referred to as, I guess, the police czar position, which will oversee the actions and the policies and procedures and budget for the police department.
Not just the police department, but public safety.
Tell me more about this.
If you read
David Moore.
If you read the proposition, it starts out with 3 objectives. The reduction of mass incarcerations or detentions, which is directed at the refugee and asylum seeker issue. The alleged the systematic racism in law enforcement, which criminality is not based on race, it's based on actions, regardless of what your race is, if you commit a crime, period. But the third objective of the proposition is the acquisition of this, as they put, scarce funds to put towards social programs that don't benefit anyone except select individuals. Social programs which have not produced the results which for decades nonprofit and tax-exempt organizations have been saying will produce. Prime example, again, back to homelessness. We spend millions of dollars on Haven for Hope. We spend millions of dollars leasing hotels for homeless people in San Antonio. We spend millions of dollars each year cleaning up the mess created by homelessness. A mess that can put neighborhoods in risk with blocking drainage and blocking flood zones, all right? They want to be able to take those dollars away and give them to another program. Well, let's face it, San Antonio has just shy of 8,000 tax-exempt programs in the city. And that's where they want to put that money. They want to take it from public safety. And the overseer of this will become the justice director. A justice director who has no qualifications, specifically written in to the proposition, that he has no knowledge, no experience, no training in law enforcement, no financial connection to law enforcement. Virtually his experience is that he doesn't have experience. But this proposition wants to put him in charge of overseeing and controlling the largest portion of our city budget over the city manager. It makes him virtually the czar of public safety.
So you're asking somebody that has no medical experience as a similarity to perform an appendectomy. And
you're putting in charge of our largest portion of the city budget under the control of an individual who is appointed by city council, who has no experience, no expertise, and virtually no knowledge of law enforcement procedures or policies.
And they're supposed to run the budget for
just
those purposes.
They're not only supposed to run the budget, they're also supposed to run the policies and procedures set out in Proposition A and ensure that they are enforced. And that in itself criminalizes law enforcement in San Antonio. Because as our illustrious city attorney said, well, these are not enforceable. In part, he is correct. They're not enforceable against you or I. But a police officer who violates an aspect of Proposition 8 is threatened with suspension or even termination if he fails to comply with Proposition 8. Even though his actions are illegal or his actions are in violation of state law, if he follows those procedures, if he follows the law, he could be terminated. It criminalizes his enforcement ability.
Another good reason to vote against Proposition A.
We already put our police officers and law enforcement at a horrendous risk. They put their families' future at jeopardy every night that they, or every day that they go out on the street to protect us. Well, now we're going to threaten them with the loss of income, the loss of their job, because we want to violate the law. We have less than 2,400 police officers in this city to protect, by last census count, 2.4 million people. It's an impossible task. But San Antonio is one of the top law enforcement agencies in the country. And this will dismantle it. Just as they did in 2020 when they took 1.4 million away from the San Antonio crisis response team. It was the premier mental health response program in the country. So important that they won an Emmy doing a documentary about our crisis intervention team. But in 2020, City Council took 1.4 million, took personnel away from the program and gave it over to San Antonio Metro Health. And I found it funny that shortly after doing that, one of the local news outlets was doing a follow-up on a story where a mental patient had gotten out of control and police were called, and somehow the individual was left in the home because of the new procedures. And while they were doing the follow-up video and news story, the individual came out armed with a gun and started shooting at him. Now suddenly, the system didn't work because why? We took away and we didn't realize that we have developed an amazing police department in San Antonio. And Proposition A is going to dismantle it.
And it sounds like the city council is doing just the opposite of what we think they should be doing by getting elected. They should be improving the city, improving the safety, improving our freedoms, and protecting our property. And I wonder, what are those guys really doing down there?
Under state law, in order for them to take office, they must swear to an oath to enforce the laws of the city of San Antonio, the state of Texas, and the federal government, to honor the law. They have violated that. They have ignored the law and put this ballot on a vote.
So this is another effort to make it harder to hold people accountable for their actions. Individuals will now be not held accountable for their actions, so then we can expect those in city council will not be held accountable for their actions, and those in other elected positions will not be held accountable for their actions. So they're bringing it all the way down to your backyard, where anybody that chooses to invade your backyard, watch you and your wife and your children get dressed or undressed or take a shower or whatever, they will not be prosecuted for violating your privacy and your freedom. Vote against Proposition A.
The only thing I can say about city council is this proposition is being presented based on 1% of the population. Our city council bent a knee to extremists, to 1% of the population. to pass and put this measure on the ballot. They need to start bending the knee to the 99% of this community who they are not representing. And it's time, well, the adage that it's time to drain the swamp, well, it's time to drain the swamp in our backyard, and that swamp is City Council.
And as they say, take care of your own backyard first before you start worrying about your neighbors. And our backyard is San Antonio.